What's up, and welcome to Locked On Lakers for a Monday. What do we know and not know about the Lakers' plans for the present and the future? We'll get into that and more with special guest Jovan Buha coming up next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Lakers your first listen every day, Monday through Friday, always free, never behind a paywall. And for the sickos who like to watch, Locked On Lakers on YouTube is a community of over 36,000 subscribers coming together to watch the show. Really fun, engaged, active, smart group of Laker diehards, often leaving comments, which we try to implement into the show. We want our audience to help shape the show that we provide for them. However you watch, listen, or both to Locked On Lakers, very much appreciated. I'm Andy Kamenetsky. My brother and co-host Brian is wrapping up his vacation. And in his place today, Jovan Buha, the host of the Buha's Block podcast. Make sure you are subscribing to his show as well. Jovan covered the Lakers for several seasons with The Athletic. Great work for years with the team. He is also quite possibly the tallest member of the Lakers local media, which is a nice honor. Can you confirm this, Jovan?
I think so. I think among the main people I am.
I want to begin with your take on the offseason for the Lakers in terms of roster short of a trade. Nobody seems to think is imminent. You obviously correct me if you disagree. Mm-hmm. This feels like the roster entering training camp. How do you like, or I guess dislike, what Rob Pelinka has done this offseason?
I think they've done an impressive job based on the limited resources that they had to improve this roster. Short of a trade, I think this is about as well as they could have done. Adding a player like a DeAndre Ayton, adding a Marcus Smart, a couple of buyout guys who I think, were they prioritizing money, could have gotten more money elsewhere. Clearly, I think based on their markets and I think both guys are closer to non-taxpayer, either the full amount or just a little bit more. Obviously, Smart signed for the BAE with the Lakers, so I think getting those two guys and selling them on a vision of their role for next season, and those guys taking kind of the chance of knowing that their NBA futures are kind of in the Lakers' hands to some extent, right? Like obviously they have to deliver their end of the deal, but like they have to play well, to earn their next contract. So I think you got that part of it, and you got Jake LaRavia, who I'm high on. I was aware of his game, but after doing a bunch of research and talking to people and some film deep dives, like I'm really impressed with his skill set, and I think he could do a bit more. So you look at that, you look at Thero and just the way that he profiles in terms of his skill set. I think there's a lot to like with what they did. I still personally would like to have seen some sort of either trade to upgrade the roster or consolidation trade to open up some flexibility to add maybe someone else on a minimum contract. I think there's still some pretty good players out there that might end up like whoever's this year's Gary Trent, of a guy who on paper is more of a non-taxpayer or taxpayer MLE guy who has to sign for a vet minimum contract because they're squeezed by the market. There are some guys out there that I think could help this roster more than some of the guys that they could have potentially done a consolidation trade for. I'd probably rather have a Malcolm Brogdon than a Gabe Vincent, or even potentially a Gary Payton II than a Gabe Vincent, especially at that cost of that minimum contract. So I think like we could quibble maybe a little bit with, I think they did the best they could in free agency. I still think this roster needed some bigger upgrades to truly be in the class of like an OKC or a Denver or a Houston. I don't think they're in that class, but based on the limited resources they had to build a roster, I think they did as well as they could have.
One point of detraction against Pelinka for this offseason is managed to get Ayton and Smart and LaRavia without giving up any assets, but two of them were buyout guys. Ayton steered to him, presumably by Bill Duffy, Luka's agent. Be seen as something of quid pro quo. Same with even Jake LaRavia sharing Austin's agent. Do you agree with this assessment that it's like less impressive work by Rob? And then B, how much does it actually matter how impressive the work or creativity, genius level wheeling and dealing? Does it matter, assuming you like the final results, at least so far?
I don't think it matters. I think it matters more for NBA Twitter or Reddit and the segment of the fan base that likes to discuss the moves and why hasn't Rob done this or that. And to be clear, I'm not like defending him not making. I think to be honest, I think it is getting to the point where like they've not made an off-season player specific trade since August 2022. I think that is pretty ridiculous, to be completely frank. Like, I think the fact that it's about to be probably a third straight summer of not making a trade, when I think there's some excuses around why they haven't or why they haven't been able to do it that I don't fully agree with. Of just, I know trades are hard. I know the new CBA makes things more difficult, but I think that it is a bit of an excuse to just kind of say, there's nothing out there. Like, if you put Rui, Dalton, and a first on the table, you will get something that I think is an upgrade. Now, we can debate whether that upgrade is worth that price and how much of an upgrade, even if it's a 5% upgrade, a 10% upgrade. But if you put that package out there with the current cost of players, and like you see first round picks are not really moving, and these player prices are often being multiple second round picks, I think if you are willing to put that on the table, you can get in the conversation for guys who are maybe a little bit better than I think some of the reported stuff that's out there. But that's an aside. So I think in terms of like whether it matters or not, I think we'll see with the results, right? If they're the 3 seed again, if they win 50 plus games again, if they go further in the playoffs, then obviously whether or not it was quo pro or whether it was favors for whatever, like, it doesn't really matter.
Or stuff dropping into your lap. Like,
or
that's
stuff dropping in your lap. Like,
distraction.
yeah, but I still think you have to close, right? And we've seen them struggle with that. I think in previous summers where they haven't gotten the buyout guys, or they've been in the mix for certain guys and they haven't been able to pull it off. So you still have to sell DeAndre Ayton on him being your starting center for at least next season, if not the foreseeable future. You still have to, like, there was other teams that could have used Marcus Smart and potentially could have even offered him a bigger role, and you still were able to convince him with the help of Luka to come to your team. So I get, like, I think the trade stuff, I get the criticism, right? But I think I don't know how much it matters. Like, I think this is more of an April or May conversation as to like where are they at in the standings and how far do they end up going in the playoffs.
Okay, I'm going to put a pin in the idea of what you could get for Rui, Dalton, and a first theoretical. I want to get into that in probably the next segment, a little more detail, but at least a piece of that with Dalton and his potential either trade value or, opposite end of it, actual value for the roster. How problematic was his summer league showing? Because he is considered, or at least was considered, among the more valuable Laker trade pieces.
I still think he is, but certainly the value has dropped from summer league. And I think it's more so stemming from like the second half of last season. I think he started to fall out of favor with the rotation, and you saw he became more of like a one shift player. And then eventually when it came down to the most important moments of the season, he was not a rotation player in the playoffs, only played in garbage time. And then you also factor in some of the reasons why he slipped in the draft were his age and his defense. And statistically, he was one of the worst defenders in the league last season, and he's 24 years old. And I don't know if you've seen there were some memes going around during summer league when he was struggling of like, he's older than Anthony Edwards, he's older than LaMelo Ball, and of course, like, those guys are it's not really a fair comparison, but like there is a point of like, he should be more NBA ready than he is, and he probably is closer to his ceiling than maybe we'd like to admit. I think he can certainly grow and get more comfortable on the offensive end, but I just don't know if he's ever going to put it together defensively. So in the conversations I had, and I said this on Buha's block, like people I was talking to, and these were not Lakers people, these were just people spitballing. You're having conversations about, what can the Lakers do? What have you heard about it? And if they are willing to put player X or player Y, and one of the people I would throw out was Dalton. It was like, unanimously, it was only a few people, but still, like, everyone I talked to was like, I would not give up a first round pick for Dalton Knecht, or like, I would not value him at a first round pick level. I think his value has decreased below that, again, factoring in the age and the defense. So I I don't know. I think like for the Lakers, it might just be at a point where you want to keep him and hopefully rehab that value moving forward. You already traded him once and you ended up having to rescind that trade. So I'm not sure how he rehabs his value, based on the current rotation, because I think he's probably more so on the outside looking in. Like he projects again, kind of, I think, as like the 10th guy maybe. So we'll see how that shakes out. But yeah, it was certainly a disappointing summer league. And I think put the stats aside, put the shooting aside, just to me, there was something with the vibe of how like it felt like he wasn't really into it in a way that like you would have liked to see him approach it. Like, I'm going to go kill everybody for 2 games and leave no doubt that I'm too good to be out there. And you could not walk away from that summer league saying he was too good to be out there. Like, that was just not true.
No, if anything, he looked like somebody who should have been starting for a summer league team, which is problematic. I want to get into the reported 2027 plan that a lot of people are getting caught up in, where you buy this narrative.
We were texting about it. Yeah.
Yes, that the Lakers will be, that they are largely projecting ahead to either this or the 2027 offseason with eyes on Giannis, Jokic, star player X, and basically unwilling to commit much of anything, that gets in the way of flexibility. How real is this? How much of a plan A is this? Get into all that coming up next. Locked On Lakers is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy Drink. It is time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavors of your favorite golf drink into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, it's a hole-in-one for your energy game, because you never know when that perfect shot is coming. I've always said the beauty and hook of golf is that every now and then a total amateur like me will hit a shot that a pro honestly could not have done any better. But you got to be ready and energized for that moment. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. Of course, the grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. And if you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5 energyshot.com. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your first order, and the offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on other subscription orders. Whether you are meeting up with friends or just trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5-hour energy shots today. So, like I mentioned, Jovan, there's been a lot of scuttlebutt about various reports that, in so many words, have the Lakers largely looking ahead to the 2026 or even 2027 off seasons, and they don't want to commit to players beyond those years unless one assumes for a superstar, because they're trying to line up possibilities for Giannis, Jokic, flexibility, maneuverability, even if it means punting 1 or I guess 2 of Luka's prime, or not investing as much as they could. I have been, since the beginning, expressing some skepticism about this being as hard and fast a plan as often presented, and get into a little bit of why I think so. But I know from listening to Buha's block, you have as well. Why?
I think there's a lot of nuance that goes into this plan and this approach. I don't think it's as hard and fast, to your point, as everyone has discussed, or a lot of the discourse has been with it. I really think this is the post LeBron plan, and and when people hear that, it's automatically received as like a pejorative toward LeBron or something. It's just like, no, like LeBron is going to be a Laker for another season, maybe 2 seasons. Like we'll see what happens next summer. We'll see what happens ahead of the trade deadline. Like there's a lot of ways that this could all play out, but I think LeBron is going to stop being a Laker at some point within, realistically, like the next year or 2. And the Lakers need a post LeBron plan. And so I think this is them trying to figure out what is the best post LeBron plan. And ideally, of course, if you could get a Giannis or get a Jokic and pair that player with Luka, even if it ends up costing you Austin, but maybe you can keep Austin and have something of like a pseudo big 3 or whatever, then that's great. That would be any team's plan A. Like the Warriors are trying to get Giannis. The Clippers are trying to get Giannis. Like everyone's trying to get Giannis. So I know, like with the Lakers, there's always extra attention paid to them and pursuing stars and them being attached to guys. And every Bovada, related tweet that comes out is the Lakers are the favorites to get Robert Williams and this player and this player. Like I get it. That's kind of how the content
They're the favorite
goes.
to get the entire league. Essentially,
exactly. Anytime anyone's available, they're always attached to the Lakers. But
it's the betting equivalent of the photoshopped memes.
Exactly. And look, and they got Luka Doncic, so like they have the knack for getting that type of player. So there's also some truth behind it for sure. But I think with this, it's more of them, whether it's 2026 or 2027, having the flexibility to execute a trade. And going to next summer, as of the 2026 draft, they will have 3 first-round picks that will be able to be moved in a trade. So you could do something of a sign-and trade with Austin Reeves and flip him at the new salary, which is going to be $30+ million plus some other additional salary matching, and then 3 first-round picks for a Giannis or whoever's the next star that becomes available that is gettable. So I think from their perspective, like there are multiple paths here. There are multiple ways that this can play out. They're trying to have that flexibility of not tying themselves down, not giving up future assets if they don't have to. Now, I think if the right trade comes along, they will give up a Rui Hachimura, a Dalton Knecht, a first-round pick. I don't think they've gotten close to finding that type of deal, and the market has been tough for them. But so I think that they are trying to juggle both, and I do think that it does compromise the present to some extent, because I think maximizing the present would probably come at the expense of the future, just by sheer value of, like, if you are trading a first now, you're not going to have that first next summer or in 2027. So like it's a tough act to juggle in terms of trying to get the best roster possible now while also building the best possible roster next summer or the following summer. I think they're trying to kind of like split that baby, and they've done about as well as they could. But if we're talking about like them building the best possible roster for this summer, I do think that like their future plans have cost that a little bit, but it's tough to balance both. And I think they're doing the best they can for right now.
Well, here's the other piece of this, though, of a lot of the 2027 hysteria that, at least for me, has seemed really unresolved. When I hear people upset about it and like what the Lakers could be doing instead, like, all in moves they could make, should make, Rui, the first, Dalton, any other expiring, whatever. And like, they're theoretically just sitting on their hands. What's the move they should be making that like actually is potentially in front of them, that is like realistically doable, that like they haven't been doing, like the opportunities they have turned down because they're prioritizing the future so much more in the present? Like, as honestly dumb as I would find essentially sitting in neutral for 2 years of Luka's prime because you want to try to lock up the possibility of Giannis from age 33 to 36. Like it's just honestly stupid. But there's only so mad I can get about it, because like, what does it feel like they've actually been turning down, like in terms of opportunity costs? And like, I don't want them to make some big performative move like that, like cosplays, we're all in, we're contending. But in reality, you're not getting that much closer. And then you're losing the ability to actually build around the star that you're hoping is going to be there for like 10 years. I also just don't think that this roster feels like punting. You know what I mean? Like, it may not be the most maximized version possible, but it doesn't feel like they're turning down opportunities just to sit on, for the time being, like one first.
Yeah, so I'm still a little bit more again, I feel like I see both sides of it. So I think like on the one hand I am criticizing them a bit, and then on the other hand I'm defending them, because I agree with you to the extent that like I don't know what that trade is necessarily. Like I do think, looking at the market and the cost of certain things, that if you are willing to trade a first, that gets you into like a certain caliber of player that I think, depending on the player, of course, like the context is everything here, but I do think there is a class of player that, to me, if you are willing to put Rui in the first, like you can get a better player. Now, again, is that player worth is the gap between that player and Rui worth the cost of a first round pick? that's its own debate. And like, I think if you ask LeBron James, the answer is yes, right? If you ask Luka Doncic, maybe the answer is no, because Luka's looking like he's like, I like this roster, but I also know that we're going to be able to make certain moves in 2026. And I think the big thing looming over everything is Luka and the extension, and all indications right now are that he is going to sign that potentially as soon as Saturday, August 2nd. So that's like the big thing of, if Luka is okay with the roster and they are cluing him in on everything that they're doing and all their plans, and he's signing off on that, and he ends up signing that extension, which again, it looks like is going to happen, then like we can debate it. We can have our issues with it. But if Luka's okay with it, that's the most important thing.
That's a point I've made a lot on this show. They should know how Luka feels. There should be open lines of communication, and there shouldn't be any guesswork. So in that sense, what they do this offseason shouldn't really affect Luka's extension, I think, unless they're just not communicating. Speaking of Luka, though, there have been a lot of pics, the latest round of skinny Luka floating around social media. Want to get into, your reaction just seeing what appears to be a committed to fitness Luka, but also how you think it could affect the Lakers on the court, plus a little LeBron. Get into that coming up next. All right, Jovan, I mentioned the skinny Luka mania going on right now. The latest pic that I've seen people going crazy about, he's looking rather fit in a sleeveless black shirt and hits a half-court shot. The kind of the shot that, by the way, we see him during practice or after practice hitting pretty regularly. Practice that all the time. Also should be noted, black is a very slimming color. So I'd like to see him maybe like in a white tee or some stripes to know for sure. But Luka looks good. Everything we've seen, Luka looks pretty good. How confident are you, or do you think you even can be, that this is a sign of Luka dedicated to a new approach to fitness?
I'm confident, at least going into next summer. Like I have in talking, I know you guys just had Istok Franco on, and I've had him on my show a couple of times, and talking to him and someone who's covered Luka since he was a teenager, he did say like there are times he goes through these phases where he takes his conditioning and just being in the best shape possible very seriously. And that seems to be more of like a seasonal thing of some summers he does it, some summers he doesn't. And that's where you could sometimes see the weight fluctuation or just the conditioning and shape fluctuation throughout his career. But I think coming off of like the way that he left the Dallas situation, the shock of it all, but also then the way that they spoke about him and leaked stuff about him and why, trying to justify why they traded him, dealing with that. And then the early exit with the Lakers. And then I think like for a lot of people, he's probably lost his spot as like I was saying before the Luka trade. If you go back to earlier Buha's Block episodes, whenever I would talk about like players in the league, I had Luka second I thought he was the second best player in the league behind Jokic. And now I think Shea winning MVP and winning a championship, you could certainly make an argument for him over Luka. Giannis is always in that mix, and that would be the other guy who I had kind of as like the top three. But for some people, I mean, we're going to see soon the top 10 lists, and Luka's probably going to drop to 5, 6, 7 for some people. And like, that's just too low. So I think the taste in his mouth with Dallas, and then the early playoff exit, and him getting some criticism over the past few months that he hasn't really dealt with earlier in his career, like I think that has been something that has been igniting him. And if you look at the way that he's looked recently, like that dude looks like a guy who can go out and win MVP next season. And if we want to bet on the Lakers exceeding expectations and outperforming whatever roster constraints or limitations that they currently have, it's Luka just going crazy next year, averaging 32, 33, 8-9 rebounds, 7-8 assists, and going out and winning his first MVP, and that team winning like 55 games, because that is certainly within play. We've seen that from him in Dallas, that level of play. And with this roster, if LeBron could still be an all-NBA type guy, like that's certainly possible.
Yeah, like this version of Luka, slimmer fitting, more fit looking Luka, how much of a difference do you think this could make for him defensively? Like Luka's offense is his offense, and honestly, as long as his body holds up, the guy could be 400 pounds. And I think he would still just generate insane offense because he's just that good at it. But defensively, there feels like a change at least could be theoretically possible in terms of how he could be implemented, different assignments he could be more capable of having, just the ability to play both ends? Like, do you think if this fitness takes, it could actually affect him on that end as well?
I think so. Like, I don't want to overstate it, right? Just because I think we have a sample size now of the last 7 years where he's largely a below average on-ball defender. I think off the ball, he's actually been pretty good. And, as a help, like it's kind of similar to Jokic where like those guys, despite not being the quickest or the most athletic, like their basketball IQ translates to the defensive end. So I thought with Luka in particular, like his hands on that end, his ability to read plays and sniff out what they're trying to do and then stop it and react. Like I think if you add in a little bit better lateral mobility and a little bit more quickness, and if he is like 10, 15 pounds lighter and can move a little bit better defensively, that probably helps with that part of it, but it also probably helps with him on the ball. Because I think on the ball is just where, like, we saw it, especially in the Minnesota series, where he's closing out the guys, and regardless of who it was, like, they're just blowing by him. And there was all the stuff about the blow by rate and whatever, like the noise with that. But I think if he gets into better shape and has a little bit better mobility on that end, that could pay dividends for the Lakers defense, because they're going to need it. Because I still think that despite the improvements with DeAndre Ayton, I think in general being a step up over Jackson Hayes, and then Marcus Smart being added in, I think LaRavia is going to be a pretty useful bench defender for them. I still think this group is going to thrive mainly on being a good team defense rather than a good individual defense. I still think if you compare their best defenders to the top of the West in like each team's best defenders, they're at the bottom of the pack, frankly. So like they're going to have to get by being a good team defense. And I think that plays more into Luka's strengths.
How would you align the starting lineup right now if JJ asked your advice on how to do this? I've talked about this a couple times, and I don't think this is. I think it's straightforward, but I'd love to hear your perspective on it. I think Marcus Smart should start over Rui, and so I think a lot of times people look at the duplication with Austin and Luka and LeBron, and I know that's a big talking point for a portion of the fan base. But to me, I think you have to look at the duplication on the defensive end, and Luka and LeBron have to guard forwards. Like neither one of those guys is capable of guarding guards, or even if LeBron can muster the energy and his athleticism to guard guards, like you are now taking away from his offensive end, and you're just putting him in a position you should not be putting a 41-year-old in year 23 to be in. So like those guys are best as helpers and off-ball defenders, and you don't want to be putting them in situations where they have to guard down. Rui is also a guy who is best at the four defensively and who they have put in that position to guard threes and guard twos. I think he's held up as well as he physically can, and he has improved on that end, but that's not his strength. And you are setting him up to fail by putting him in that position. So I think bringing in a guy in Marcus Smart who I think can guard 1 through 3, can even guard some 4s in watching his defensive film. I do think guards up more, which is where like I think some people are thinking he's just going to come in and be like a lockdown backcourt guy. I still think they have this issue where like they don't have a great backcourt defender. I guess Vando's probably the closest, but even Vando I think has kind of shifted some of his defensive assignments recently to also being more of like a wing, or the Lakers have used him as like a small ball center at times. And it's like, maybe that's just a deployment issue, but I still think they have this backcourt problem where whether it's Gabe or Smart or Vando in like a limited role, they don't have a 30+ minute a night guy who can go out and check the quickest, most athletic guards. But I would go Marcus Smart just because I do think he is their best, I would say like high minute perimeter defender, because again, like I mentioned this with Vando, he played 36 games last year. He only played over 20 minutes 6 times, and in 5 of those 6 games, a starter was out. So there was a reason why he was playing more minutes. So I just think if you look at the way that JJ used Vando and the way that JJ believes in Vando, he views him as like a 12 to 18 minute a night guy, maybe even like a 12 to 15 minute a night guy. That's not changing. So I don't see him starting. I don't see him playing 30 minutes a night. Even in the playoffs, he didn't play 20 minutes in any of the games. So it's like he just views Vando as like an 8th or 9th man. And with that constraint, I think that puts a lot on Marcus Smart defensively. So
I think Marcus Smart, like, yes, you're probably taking a step back offensively going from Rui to Marcus Smart, but you're taking a step up defensively in a big way. He's a versatile defender. He could do a lot of different things. And I think you're getting a bit smaller, but like he does guard up pretty well. And I just think the Lakers really need a good perimeter defender out there. And to me, he's the one that makes the most sense.
Yeah, I agree with basically everything you said. Just there, first of all, cutting down on the defensive redundancy, even acknowledging that Marcus Smart's best days as a point of attack defender maybe behind him. You still have to get into who is relatively best for the job, even if nobody's perfect. And Marcus Smart, I feel like, falls in the category of the best option for the toughest assignment 1 through 3, even if he's not perfect, unless JJ is going to, I guess, believe in Vando more. I think find more utility for him offensively, and some of that is Vando, I think, in particular, becoming a better finisher. Like, for all the focus on the lack of outside shot, I think the real problem is it's pretty inexplicable how much
I was going to say Ben Simmons-ish.
His inability to finish around the rim for somebody as athletic as he is, as good of an offensive rebounder, as aggressive as he is around there, it's kind of bizarre, and maybe a healthy offseason will help. I also don't like how JJ deploys Vando defensively. I think he should be more like a guy guarding guards and small wings, but I can get a vote. But I agree with you that you cut down on the defensive redundancy as much as realistically possible with the roster by putting Smart in place of Rui. I also think you're going to get more utility from Rui as an offensive player coming off the bench. Like, I know there have been times where his focus has waned coming off the bench, but I just feel like if he's in a lineup with, forget just LeBron, Austin, Luka, you've now got DeAndre Ayton in there. Like, Rui struggled sometimes to get enough shots when he's playing alongside Jackson Hayes. I think like you're going to get more utility from Rui, like consistently coming off the bench. And if you don't at that point, then I think that's really when you need to trade him. But I know there are people who will say play Austin off the bench. I understand the argument for it. I don't think it solves. I mean, forget the small p politics of it. I also don't think it actually addresses the issue as directly as playing Rui off the bench, even though I understand the argument for Austin. And if this roster had some different players, I think you could actually make a really strong case for it, but they don't have those players.
Yeah, I think, like, if you, because I get this question a lot, and I'm vehemently against the whole bench Austin talk, just because I think there's a sizable gap between him and whoever you want to consider the fourth best player on this team. Frank, I mean, I would probably lean Rui, but it's probably close between Rui and Ayton. Maybe you want to lean Ayton on the track record, and if Smart can bounce back, like, he gets in that conversation as well. But whoever you want to pick as the fourth best guy, like, I think there is a notable gap to the point of, like, I don't know any other team, and I know we could cherry pick examples and go back and, like, San Antonio. Okay, yeah, Ginobili they brought off the bench, but
Lamar Odom did it with the Lakers
in 2020. Lamar Odom did it, but, like, I think the league was a little bit different back then, and the way that teams kind of function was a little bit different. But, like, looking at the current NBA landscape, like, I don't see a player of Austin's caliber coming off the bench for any team, regardless of, like, the fit. Right. So, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot with that, but if you kind of go through, like, the third best guy on any good team, most of that, especially if they're more of an offensive minded guy, like, those guys start. That's just, like, how it goes.
Yeah, the only guy that comes to mind off the top of my head, and may not be apples to apples in terms of third versus fourth best, but I think just in terms of sort of where they are considered in the NBA hierarchy, kind of, and what they do, maybe Naz Reid with Minnesota. Like, he's one of the only guys that pops to mind, but even if he's a good example, he's kind of exception that proves the rule.
And yeah, I think there's a little bit like my just pushback would be like there's a limitation of, I think, to playing like two centers together, right?
Sure.
That isn't there. Like you can Luka and Austin actually without LeBron had a pretty good net rating together, and like that, it's something that's still a work in progress. But I think the other thing to like put aside whatever Austin's status or like him elevating to a certain level, I think when we talk about the redundancy defensively, I look at you still need a second backcourt guy. So even if Marcus Smart's defending the best 1 through 3 guy, if that's a 2, you still need someone to guard a 1. And for all of Austin's defense limitations, I think part of that's been overblown. Like I think he's largely fine against guards, and I think he's actually done decently well against like some all-star level guards. It's really when he gets switched and picked on by the Julius Randle types, or like and because the Lakers switch so much, like you can manipulate those matchups. But when he's going up against bigs or big wings, that's where he's in trouble. When he's going up against guards, like he chases well around screens. He's got good footwork. He's quicker than I feel like people like want to give him credit for. So I feel like he actually holds up fairly well. And if he's your second backcourt defender, I think that's fine. But the issue is if you're playing Cleveland and you have Marcus Smart on Donovan Mitchell, do you want Rui chasing Darius Garland around, or LeBron or Luka? Like that's a mismatch. So now you could start Vando, I guess, but that's completely changing the starting lineup in a different direction. So I think you still need Austin for the backcourt matchups, whereas Rui, because of Luka and LeBron, he becomes more of a redundancy and makes far more sense off the bench.
This is the type of analysis that you get all the time on Buha's Block, which again, everybody should be subscribing to, listening to, watching on YouTube, Buha's Block. You can also follow Jovan at Jovan Buha on all of the different social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. As always, man, appreciate the time. It's always fun. I volunteer as tribute for whenever you need people on Buha's Block. I am there. So just let me know, because that is fun as well. Coming up for Tuesday, I think Brian is back in town. If he's not, I need to find another guest quickly. But until then, appreciate everybody watching, listening, and we will see you on Tuesday.